So, in recent news, have you heard this? A group of January 6th defendants have struck back and initiated a class action lawsuit against 21 Capitol Police officers and officials and are seeking millions of dollars in damages. Now, this legal action stems from the protest of January 6, 2021, when among the mostly peaceful protesters, a contingent winded up entering the U.S. Capitol. Now, the plaintiffs, who described themselves as victims of police violence and negligence during the riot, are accusing the officers of excessive force, gross indifference, and dereliction of duty. Now, the lawsuits have been filed amidst ongoing discussions about the conduct of law enforcement during the Capitol riot. It is a shining of a light on the absurd aftermath of the January 6th events, from years of imprisonment without a trial to the physical and emotional injuries sustained by the protesters during January 6th incident. The plaintiffs are arguing that the Capitol Police was not only disproportionate, but also indicative of a failure to appropriately manage the situation, leading to unnecessary harm. Now, Newsweek reported on this earlier today. They said a group of January 6 defendants has filed a class action lawsuit against 21 Capitol Police officers and officials for millions of dollars in damages. One of the inmates, Edward Jacob Lang, told the conservative cable channel Real America's Voice that over 78 January 6 defendants are claiming millions of dollars in damages and injuries that the Capitol Police caused us. He said, "It's horrible. I got shot in the foot with a rubber bullet. Other people were bludgeoned nearly to death, hit with chemical spray, and had long-lasting lung effects, and so we are now serving 21 defendants, Capitol Police officers and Capitol Police officials." Lang described himself as a January 6th political prisoner. He was arrested soon after the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. According to an FBI affidavit from January 15th, federal investigators were tipped off about Lang's participation in the attack on the Capitol by members of the public who shared photos and videos that he himself had shared on social media. They showed that he was involved in the riot, according to the affidavit. Now, Lang is accused of wielding a dangerous weapon against Capitol Police officers, as well as obstruction of an official proceeding, and he's been in prison ever since his arrest. He has pleaded, though, not guilty to all accounts. Now, this legal challenge is further shining a light on the perceived lack of accountability and justice towards the Capitol Police from actions taken before and after the Capitol riot. Now, worth noting here, the United States Capitol Police, otherwise known as the USCP, has conducted internal investigations in response to the events of January 6th. And according to their update on these investigations, the USCP's Office of Professional Responsibility launched 38 internal investigations and was able to identify the officers involved in 26 of the cases. The U.S. Attorney's Office did not find, though, any sufficient evidence that any of these officers committed a crime, and in the end only recommended disciplinary action for 6 cases for minor violations. But do not worry, my friends. The USCP has stated that they are committed to accountability when officers fail to meet the standards governed by USCP policies and the congressional community's expectations. Now, we do also know, though, that the USCP has faced criticism and allegations from a whistleblower who accused 2 of its senior leaders of mishandling intelligence and failing to respond adequately during the January 6th riot. The whistleblower's allegations included claims that former acting chief Pittman lied to Congress about an intelligence report the Capitol Police had received before the riot. And of course, the USCP has also been, and I believe rightly so, criticized for the differential treatment of the January 6 rioters compared to other protests, such as the hate group Black Lives Matter riots. There's also the House GOP report that alleged that the January 6th committee deleted records and promoted a politicized narrative of these events. The report criticized the committee for focusing on Trump and his supporters rather than addressing security failures. Now, the GOP report also claimed that the committee suppressed testimony showing that the Trump administration had pushed for a National Guard presence on January 6th, suggesting that important information was hidden from the public. Now, this accusation against the January 6th committee is hardly surprising, though, considering that there is a deep-seated level of corruption from some of the members of the January 6th committee. You have people like the political hack Liz Cheney, who has a grudge and an axe to grind against Trump, and perhaps the most prolific and bald-faced liars in our lifetimes among the House of Representatives. I am, of course, referring to Mr. Pinocchio himself, Adam Schiff. Now, as the Washington Times reported at the end of last year in December, they listed his most recent trail of endless falsehoods that he has spewed out to the American people. There is the debunked Russiagate lie that Schiff pushed to the public. And essentially what that was is throughout President Trump's presidency, Mr. Schiff was a frequent guest on television talk shows. He was valued at the time for his position as the top Democrat on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which had access to classified information. He was constantly on television promoting what we now know were complete fabrication and lies. He was telling the American people things like there was plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight. So effectively, our favorite little liar, Adam Schiff, was making it up as he went along, as the collusion claim would eventually be disproved. However, that was just the tip of the iceberg. Conveniently, he was also the man who pushed and hyped the Steele dossier. The Steele dossier was a 35-page unverified political opposition research report commissioned by the Hillary Clinton campaign and published by BuzzFeed News shortly after Trump took office. The claims from the made-up Steele dossier included accusations that Russia had been blackmailing Trump, including a visit to Moscow where he supposedly hired prostitutes to urinate on a bed used by the Obamas on a prior stay at his hotel. Now, as the Washington Times reported in their article, they said this. They said, Mr. Schiff publicly promoted the Steele dossier back in 2017 and even read parts of it out loud at a House Intelligence Committee hearing to amplify his claim that Mr. Trump was closely tied to Russia. When government officials declared that the dossier essentially was garbage, Mr. Schiff blamed Igor Danchenko, the Russian operative who provided the information to dossier author Christopher Steele, who was the former British spy. And he went on to say about it publicly that he didn't regret saying that we should investigate claims of someone who, frankly, was a well-respected British intelligence officer. This, Mr. Schiff said on the NBC's Meet the Press. And he went on to say that we couldn't have known years ago that we would learn years later that someone who is a primary source lied to him. And of course, that's a bunch of garbage. There was a lot of complaints about the authenticity of the Steele dossier directly from the beginning. Now, this isn't all. Mr. Schiff's role as a top Trump antagonizer in the House of Representatives included downplaying the proven accusation that Mr. Trump was the subject of improper surveillance under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, meaning he was spied on prior to him being elected back in 2016. And Adam Schiff was also deeply involved in the impeachment drive during a House Intelligence Committee hearing. And at one point, Adam Schiff just straight up lied under oath when he read a phony transcript of President Trump's call with the president of Ukraine.
This is the essence of what the president communicates. We've been very good to your country, very good. No other country has done as much as we have. But you know what? I don't see much reciprocity here. I hear what you want. I have a favor I want from you, though. And I'm going to say this only 7 times, so you better listen good. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent, understand lots of it. On this and on that, I'm going to put you in touch with people, and not just any people. I'm going to put you in touch with Attorney General of the United States, my Attorney General, Bill Barr. He's got the whole weight of the American law enforcement behind him. And I'm going to put you in touch with Rudy. You're going to love him, trust me. You know what I'm asking, and so I'm only going to say this a few more times, in a few more ways. And by the way, don't call me again. I'll call you when you've done what I asked. This is, in character, what the president was trying to communicate with the president of Ukraine. It would be funny if it wasn't such a graphic betrayal of the president's oath of office. But as it does represent a real betrayal, there's nothing the president says here that is in America's interest, after all.
Now, after being caught faking the phone call transcript and receiving calls to resign, Mr. Schiff then pretended the phone call was merely a jest. And he said about it that, well, my summary of the president's call was meant to be at least in part parody. The fact that that's not clear is a separate problem in and of itself. And of course, the president never said, if you don't understand me, I'm going to say it 7 more times. My point is, that's the message that the Ukraine president was receiving in not so many words. So essentially, Adam Schiff was just making it up as he went along. And this goes on and on and on. And of course, Adam Schiff well, never faced any consequences for his actions, which, let's be frank, isn't really surprising considering the two-tier justice system, which we are now living under here in the US. So, when you have people like this running the January 6th committee, you can see why trusting in the findings is at best problematic. But whether or not this lawsuit will succeed is still another question entirely, and only time will tell.